it's Dan Eberhard here, and welcome to the Growing the Future podcast, where we talk to folks who like to innovate, collaborate, and transform the agricultural industry. Thank you so much for joining us for Season 5, Episode 8. Today is going to be a very special episode, folks. I guarantee you that. I have a childhood friend on the podcast, someone who I got to know through our parents and lives just a stone throw from the farm. And she has done a very special thing that I'm very proud of her for, and that is she has written a book about mental health and her life experiences and her advice to you on how to navigate the sometimes choppy waters of our lives. I think we all experienced that. I know I had a mental health yesterday. I wish that we had, done the podcast yesterday, although I wasn't in a good state of mind. So maybe it's good we're doing it today. But you have something to look forward to if you've ever had any form of strife or anxiety in your life. So we're going to talk to her about that. But before I introduce today's esteemed guest, I'd like you to check out the Eberhard family of companies online with eberhardfarms.com, where we grow food to feed the world in Langeberg, Saskatchewan, not far from today's guest's farm. Suregrowth.ca, where we offer precision agronomy consulting services there. Convergencegrowth.com, where we accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture. And AberhardAgSolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions of the future to your farm. And you can get notified about all of our new episodes by signing up for our newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca. My next guest is a journalist by trade and a farmer by choice. Interesting choice of words. She has recently written a memoir that tells the story of her battles with depression and anxiety. She has made it her life's work to start more discussions around advocating for agriculture, for women, and for mental health, and she works hard to help others stay small town strong when things get tough. I love that, small town strong, because that is a thing. Anyone from a small town can attest. Today we're going to talk about, her background, her perspective, where she comes from in a rural community. We're going to talk about why she wrote this book, and we're going to talk about what's in the book, and we're going to talk about how this can have an impact on your life in an industry that we all know to be a little bit challenging on the mental health front. Have you ever had a wrench thrown at your head by a loved one? Or had someone that in the past you didn't know what was wrong with them? We now know more, and Lewellyn's here to educate us. Welcome to the show, Lewellyn Melnyk.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. It is great to talk to you.
Well, I am honored, and I knew that you were on this journey. I've been watching you on social media, and I saw that you were writing a book, and I was very excited for the finished product. And I see that you have accomplished Mount Everest there to come up with a completed book. And now it's out, and then I saw you on the news and had to have you on the show. So tell us, I guess we should start at a little bit about your background in the context of who you are, where you're from, and your perspective, where you see the world from. Start there.
Sure. So I grew up on a farm just north of Russell, Manitoba. We were a grain farm. And so we now, I guess, would be called a third generation farm. My brother is still running our family farm with my dad and my sister, my mom and my sister-in-law. And so I grew up there, and was like any other farm kid. I had my shop cats and my bicycles and my garden and all the things. And I lived a pretty charmed life on the farm, honestly. I did grow up in the 80s though, and so you know what the 80s were like. It was kind of tough. And so I struggled with depression as a child, as a 12-year-old. And so I had like this struggle with growing up on the farm, because it's not that I necessarily didn't like the farm life. I loved it, but I really struggled with my mental health, and the environment that I was in was maybe not the best to nourish my mental health. And so um, it was it was kind of a struggle because when you grow up in a rural community, you're pretty isolated, and there's not a lot of supports for you there. Um, and so I struggled as a child, and a lot of I write in my book, a lot of that I kind of attributed to the farm, just because it was okay. Well, there we couldn't go anywhere to a school dance, or we couldn't go to a family wedding, or we couldn't do some of the things because it was seeding time or it was harvest time, and the farm was everything. And so it was, I guess, hard for me to understand at a young age that the farm came first. And and so in my head I kind of read that I came last, which wasn't necessarily the case. But as a 12-year-old's perspective, I struggled with that. I struggled with.
When you talk about anxiety and depression as a 12-year-old in the 80s, I can really relate because I would say that I also had some mental health issues as a younger person growing up in the same era, in the same set of circumstances. But we knew nothing. We had no understanding. We had no awareness, and we had no social media at that time to even, follow these. We didn't have the internet. How did we even know what was the affliction that you speak of, and what did you experience?
So we didn't know. You're right. Like, I didn't know as a 12-year-old what was wrong. I just remember having a conversation with my mom and just telling her, like, I don't want to live anymore. Like, I just had no zest for life at all. And I didn't know why. I had really no self-awareness whatsoever. And at 12, like, you don't really know what depression even is, right? Like, I didn't really understand what was going on. And so um, she took me to the pediatrician and we tried to get help. Um, but you're right. We were just in a spot where it was like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And can anyone tell me? No, nobody really knows why. And here we are. Okay. How do we deal with this? So the flip side of that is like, wow, we are eons ahead of that now, right? And so I just think if my daughter was in the same situation, gosh, I would have I'm armed with so much knowledge now, right? Like I could help her. But I mean, back then we didn't really talk about mental health at all. We didn't really discuss it. We didn't know any way to improve it. That's for sure. Like it just wasn't something that people talked about. So, yeah, it was difficult at that time. And so I guess writing this book was just all of the knowledge that I've acquired since that time and all of the help that I've found over my 41 years here on this earth. And I have learned so much and gathered so much information that I really just wanted to share it with people and put it all kind of in one place so that if you're struggling, okay, what can you do? This is a handbook for you.
Sweet. So where began the dawn of understanding, and how did that translate to writing a book?
Well, dawn of understanding. I won't say there was like, oh, we turned a page and all of a sudden I feel amazing because it's not how it works, unfortunately. But it was a ton of learning over a long period of time. So I just feel like in the last few years, especially when COVID hit, actually, when people were talking about they were struggling, I struggled for so long. So when I heard people talking about it, I was like, well, this is what I do, and this is what helps me. And so I just realized that there was like this need, that there were so many people who didn't know what to do when they were struggling with their mental health. Because I think traditionally, um, you know, there are people who struggle often, maybe more than others, but we all struggle with mental health. And then during that time, it was like everyone was relating, right? Everyone kind of understood what was going on, and we all kind of had those feelings. And so I had an awakening that, oh, I can help people. Like I know what to do, but I feel like crap. And so let me write this down. So yeah, I just kind of decided one day that I had to put something together to help other people because it was kind of calling on my heart. I had lived the experience. I had the know how to write. I was trained in journalism, and so the two kind of meshed together. And so that's the result.
When you say we all feel this way, can you tell me more about that? How do you see that, or what has your experience been communicating with others about this kind of thing?
So I think when I say we all feel this way, we all have mental health, physical health, mental health. We have both. Like we all experience health in different ways, and mental health is something that can be like waves. So you're going to have like really good days and then you're going to have really bad days. And it's the same with our physical health. Our mental health is exactly the same. You're going to have an ebb and flow kind of thing. But I just find there's so much power in sharing our stories. And so lots of times if I open up and talk to somebody about my story, they'll come back with, I have experienced that. I know exactly what you're talking about, or I went through this. And so I'm even finding just with my book coming out, there's lots of people reaching out to me just to share their experiences. Well, one of the best things to improve our mental health is to talk. That is the best thing. And so sharing our stories is so super valuable, so valuable. And that in itself is it's like gold for your mental health, just to talk and just to share. So, yeah, I'm finding that people are coming back and saying, I just need to talk. That's what I need to do. And so great. If that's your self-awareness, if that's what you're getting to, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we can do, but let's start there.
What do you think prevents folks from addressing it? Because I think a lot of us travel through life and we never address some of our behavior, let alone the underlying causes that are informing that behavior, which is essentially subconscious.
Yeah. So when you talked about being self-aware, that's where that comes in. So our behavior, maybe we're used to doing something and it's kind of our normal, but when you have kind of a self-reflection and really listen to what's going on, sometimes your behavior can kind of give you clues about what's going on. And also even your physical health, because you know that sometimes the first sign of you struggling is that your physical health can go. And so, lots of times, even just recognizing that, recognizing what's going on, and is there something that I'm bothered by, or is there something that's off? And so, it's really being self-aware of how you're feeling all the time.
Llewellyn, when you were writing this book and when you're conveying this information to people, are you more on the technical side of the spectrum when it comes to mental health, like the nuts and bolts, or are you more on the practical side, like here's what's happening, here's how to fix it, versus all the technical side of what could be going on from thousands of hours of therapy, for example?
Yeah, so I touch on both. Um, and so in my book, it kind of tells my own personal story and then what helped me. So I go through nutrition in one chapter, I go through um, exercise in another chapter, and how exercise has been like amazing to me. It was one of the tools that I've relied on and I continue to rely on every single day because exercise has really improved the quality of my life, my mental health, my physical health, everything. But yeah, I go through and kind of break down in chapters, this helped me. What can you do? So what's the best exercise? And nutrition. What's the best nutrition for your mental health? And yeah, if we're going to go to therapy, that's a great thing. But what else can you do? If you're not going to go to therapy, what else can you do? Because we know that there's a lot of reluctancy, and sometimes people don't want to maybe even say that they're struggling. And if you don't want to say that you're struggling, which it's okay because it's like having a broken arm. If you're struggling with your mental health, there's no shame in saying you struggle with your mental health or you have a broken arm. There shouldn't be any difference whatsoever. We all deserve help no matter what it is, if you have an ailment. But yeah, each chapter kind of goes through kind of the technical side of things, and then also my own story. So I kind of tie everything together and talk about, looking at gratitude and how that can play a role, and looking at connection and having important people in your life, and talking, and also having self confidence. I mean, there's a lot of times that we struggle with, I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing what I should be, or having some expectations on ourselves, which the best thing I think is knowing who we are, being confident in who we are, and not trying to be anybody that we're not. Like, really, honestly, let's put it back to basics. That's a lot of things that can improve your mental health right there. So, yeah, I touch on all of those things, technical, you name it. I pretty much touch on all of it. And then tie in the farming aspect with it, because a lot of times I struggled with the farm. And so I always kind of blamed the farm and resented the farm. And that was not the cause of my mental illness. I'd like to say that it was, but it wasn't. I wasn't taking time for myself. I wasn't being self-aware. I wasn't doing a lot of things that I could have done to help myself. But we do know that living on the farm can be super challenging. And that in itself, this lifestyle, is one that does not foster great mental health. And so there are a lot of things that we can be challenged with when we're living on the farm. And so it can be the hours, it can be the stress, it can be finances, it can be the lack of self-care, it can be so many things. And so I really think my book is unique because it's a perspective of a female farmer. Okay. So you don't, first of all, read a lot of books from farmers because our rural stories sometimes get lost often, and also a female perspective. So it's a little bit different perspective, but I think a good, valuable resource for our rural communities. That's for sure.
Well, you said a lot there, and I'm excited to ask you about a few of these things. But I feel like you've alluded to a little bit, but I don't know. Did we get your whole story? You were 12 years old. You didn't know what was happening. You had some issues. I had the same conversation with my father, by the way. Now that you mention that, I just remember sitting in his office, and I don't know why exactly or what was bothering me at the time. Probably around the same age, because I think for me that's kind of when the darkness, descended when I hit my teens. But I remember sitting with my father and saying, "Yeah, I was crying, and I said I really don't want to. I don't want to live." So I can really relate to that. Since then, I felt like that. But you obviously have some self awareness. Well, the world isn't ending. You don't really want to go on, but you're gonna, and it's okay. But I mean, at the time, it was really foreign. So what happened at 12 years old? You went to this pediatrician. What happened from there? What's your story from there?
So they decided that I had whack hormones and had a chemical imbalance, and so put me on birth control pill, and and tried to do some things, I guess chemically, to help me balance my hormones. I feel like when you're at that stage of life, like I said, when you're going through your teen years, like there's just so much going on. So like try and figure that puzzle out. Honestly, for anyone, I think it is hard. Um, but I did improve over time, and I realized over time that a bad day isn't a bad life, and that we're allowed to have bad days, which for a while I kind of thought we weren't, and that's just not true. I mean, we're all allowed to have tough days or tough seasons, and we know that they're not going to last forever, like you said. So that realization was really important. I became a journalist and I loved my job. I loved reporting. I did the news. I thought it was great. I loved writing. Um, and I really enjoyed that part of my life in my 20s. I, it was an incredible job. I have so many great memories of being a journalist. But I also struggled there too. And it was just habits that I hadn't acquired yet. So not taking time for myself and not looking after myself properly and really just throwing myself into my work. I was, a workaholic and a people pleaser, and I got stuff done, which is great for an employer, but wasn't always great for me. So I did struggle and ended up moving back to the farm when I married my husband James, and so that was another kind of difficult time for me because I knew moving back to the farm was going to present all the same challenges that I had dealt with before, and so I wasn't sure. Okay, do I really want to do this or do I not want to do this? Well, I did love the farm life, love it. I still love it, um, and I'm so glad that I am a farmer now, and I wouldn't change it. Does that mean I don't struggle? Absolutely not. In my book, I talk about dealing with anxiety as an adult. When my kids were small, I was, trying to raise two kids and trying to do everything on the farm that I did before I had kids and didn't take anything off the plate, just kept adding it. Well, that doesn't work. It didn't work. And I got to a point where I just had panic attack after panic attack, and the anxiety had a full hold on me again in my 30s. So, um, I had to change things. And that was kind of a turning point for me. It was like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't how I want to live. So let's do things differently. And that kind of started my journey of what do I need to do? And let's change this. Let's change the everyday and make sure that we're doing the right things every day so that we're not in this place of burnout, anxiety, depression, because that's no place to live. Um, and so, yeah, uh, I now am so thankful for my self-awareness, but gosh, it's taken a lot of time, and a lot of learning and a lot of reading and a lot of counselors, but grateful for my journey because um, I think that it's it's helping other people now. And in that, there's healing for me too. And I'm finding the more I share my story and the more stories that people are sharing with me, it's helping both sides.
Can you share with us specifically your experience on the panic attacks and the depression? Because I have experienced panic attacks in my youth, completely out of the blue. They were they were related to reading in class and public speaking. Believe it or not, nobody
And
really
you're running
believes
a
that because I
podcast.
talk way
Look at
too
you.
much publicly. I know. Well, it's
Love
for
it.
me getting on the stage and doing a keynote at a trade show is like a superpower now. It's like leaping out of a wheelchair, and it's still terrifying at times, but I really revel in that. But when I had those panic attacks in class, specifically when it came to reading, it was something so foreign that overtook me. I'd never ever heard of it. Really didn't really know what it was until really decades later. Like, what did you experience? What did you go through? And I think for folks to hear your story can really help them relate and set the stage for some of these solutions we'll talk about here shortly.
Yeah. So a panic attack, if you've never experienced it, for me was sometimes my face would go numb. Sometimes I would pass out. Sometimes I would get really, really hot and then get really, really cold. Sometimes I'd shake. Um, my heart would race. So, and that would be the thing that kind of got me is like my chest would get tight, like it was hard to breathe, and my heart would race. And it was an awful, awful, awful feeling. Um, and lots of times I would have these in the middle of the night, sometimes not even during the day. So my kids were really small at that time when this was happening. And I would wake up in the middle of the night having this panic attack, and I wouldn't know what was going on. Well, my brain was going 100 miles an hour all day long. I would lie down to go to sleep, and my body was just telling me like, okay, breathe, but I can't. Like, so my mind was just going 100 miles an hour, and that was the result. It wasn't fun. It doesn't feel good. Um, I lost a lot of sleep for a long period of time until I got them under control. The very first one I had happened on an airplane on the way back from a vacation. That was terrifying. Probably for my husband as well. Because I didn't know what was going on. And you're right. Until you kind of do some
Well, I
research
was
and
going to
Google
ask
it,
you
you're
if
like,
James
I don't
was
know
in the
what this
book.
is. James is a big part of the book. He is really helpful for me and grounding and the voice of reason a lot of times. So yeah, um, he's a blessing.
Way to go, James. He's a good guy. I sold James a sprayer, by
Yeah,
the way.
you did sell us a sprayer.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, it's one thing to experience it as well, but I think it's also another thing to walk alongside someone who has an invisible disease that you don't understand, right? That you just see the behavior. And as you're talking too, I think about marriages. I think about relationships with our children, with our parents. I think about, being a teammate in a company. I think about my own behavior. I think about taking responsibility for my own well-being so I can be a leader, so I can provide, so I can lead. But I also think about a lot of people's behavior around me that I can't always explain or don't understand, and I get frustrated by, hey, why aren't you happy? We should be grateful. We're not getting, the old mentality. We got food in our belly. Other people they're starving. We're not getting shot at. You know, we should be grateful. But it's hard to explain to someone who's sick with an invisible specter holding them back, holding them down, right?
Yeah, so sometimes those comments, while they might be helpful to put things in perspective, might be hurtful in the way that um, it's not validating how you're feeling. And so we are allowed to hurt, say we're hurting, and it's not up to somebody else to decide if we're allowed to or not. Um, and so I think that when you talk about your loved ones and your children and your coworkers, the best thing we can do for their mental health is to validate how they're feeling. And so if somebody is saying that I'm not having a good day and I'm struggling, well, you can validate that because I think the best thing to do is, well, I hear that you're struggling. Is there something I can do to help? Is probably a better option than, well, a lot of people have it worse off than you. Suck it up, right? So you're absolutely right. We hear it too much. We do. We hear it way too much that you don't have it that bad and a lot of people have it worse. And what does that say to you if you're struggling? I don't want to talk about it and I shouldn't feel this way and maybe I feel guilty for feeling this way. No, we don't want to feel guilt and we don't want to feel shame. And if we're feeling that way, we're allowed to. And we absolutely can be validated. And that's just the only solution.
I think a lot of it comes from the farming culture where it wasn't that long ago and you had to keep moving. You physically had to keep moving from dusk till dawn. From dawn till dusk, just to get it done. Now I think, let's be real, there are more options. I mean, we're pretty mechanized, we're pretty automated. You don't have to work like our grandfathers did. God bless them.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you to them for doing all of that hard work so that we could have the innovation we
Mm-hmm.
do now and the farms that we do now. What a blessing. My 98-year-old grandfather tells me stories of the things they did, and it seems like it was 100 years ago, which it almost was. But um, yeah, you can't even fathom the changes that have happened, and what a blessing. Um, I think that those technological changes are akin to also what we're talking about right now, and being more self-aware and talking about stuff. And it's great to see both of those things happening.
Yeah, I'm grateful for both the awareness and the technology that's come with time, and also with age, being able to figure some of this out. So I'm looking at this laundry list. nutrition, exercise therapy, gratitude, connection, self-confidence. I want to talk about boundaries too. What kind of came first for you? Where does it all fit in the journey, and what's been really powerful for you? I mean, break down some of the chapters in your book about the solutions here.
Okay, well, let's start with boundaries because you said what's the most important. I'm going to say boundaries. And I have a chapter, chapter 5 is all about
Really?
boundaries.
Okay, this
And I
is
talk about,
juicy. This is happening in my
yeah,
life right now. I want to know.
okay. So I talk about building fences. That's what chapter 5 is about. So on the farm, we have lots of fences. And if you have livestock, you can relate to this because you have to keep predators out and you have to keep the cows in. Okay, so let's just use that picture in your head right now. Okay, so you are the cow, all right? You're in the fence. Um, there's stuff coming at you all the time. All right. So somebody asks you to coach baseball. Well, I don't think I can coach baseball. So it's a hard no because I've got to be in the field and we've got seating to do. Okay. So there's a boundary right there. Somebody asks you to bake muffins for a bake sale. Can't do that either. Sorry. I'm committed. My schedule's full. Can't do it. There's a lot of things that we say no to, but with boundaries, I also want to remind you that it can be the other way. Okay. So we're in the fence. What is the fence doing? It is protecting what is important to us. So, what are the things that we really value? We need boundaries to protect those things too. So, it's not just to keep things out, it's protect the things that really matter. And so, when I talk about knowing yourself and knowing what's important and knowing what matters, are you doing those things? Are you protecting those things? Are you making time for those things? Because that is equally important. So, boundaries, they're a fence. They're keeping stuff out. They're protecting what's in. They're not a wall. It's not a wall. You can still look over the fence. You can still talk to people. You're not blocking the whole world out. It's just a fence. But super important. And I would say that has been kind of a lesson in my life that I need to stand up and say what's important to me and be vocal about that, make everyone aware about that. And there's no shame in doing that. And we all need to do that if we want to look out for ourselves and our own mental health. You don't have to be rude, but you do have to be confident in saying what you want and when you need it and what you can't do and what you can do. And that has been a learning process for me, but gosh, such a rewarding one. So rewarding.
I saw that chapter and I was especially interested by it. And specifically, what do you do with family members who think that they can go through the gate, regardless of the quality of your fence, at will, and are rather offended when you say, actually, no, this fence applies to you as well. I love you.
Yeah.
But this is also for you.
Yeah, that's hard. Those are hard conversations to have. I absolutely hear you. And we have them on the farm all the time, right? Like I know we all can relate to what you're talking about. I think that here's the thing. If your fence has been pushed on and leaning over a lot of years, people get used to that. And all of a sudden, when you put your fence back up and really are stern about what that fence means for you, people get uncomfortable because they're not used to it. So if you're somebody who has struggled with boundaries in the past, it's really that transition of putting them in place is going to be a tough one because it's going to make people uncomfortable. They're not going to be used to it. But after that transition is done, it will be worth it. It will be worth it. And so you're right. Having those conversations are hard, but you have to say, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm not going to do that. That doesn't work for me. What else can we do? Simple as that. You're allowed to say that no matter what it is.
The funny part is, I think when I reflect on what you're saying to me, the heavy lifting is establishing the nature of the fence and who it's for and what it means and why it's there. I think once it's done, there's a huge sense of relief on the part of the fence owner that finally, okay, my boundaries aren't being run over. And because when you grant that access, it's more gets taken, doesn't it? But it's funny how I think you set healthy boundaries, and I don't know if you have any advice on how to set or what is the difference of a healthy versus unhealthy boundary, if there's such a thing. But once you set that, it's kind of crazy to me the result of how the respect flows from that once people know and understand it and it's been in place a while.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily there's a healthy or unhealthy boundary. I think it's it's something so specific to each person, each individual. Um, but you're right, the reward of knowing where they should be and what they are is going to pay dividends.
We were talking about nutrition before we went live. I just got my blood test back yesterday. The doctor phoned me and said everything's amazing. I'm very healthy, and I felt so lucky and so blessed. And I was getting that blood test because I'm going back to the naturopath tomorrow, which some people think is sort of like a witch doctor, and I guess the equivalent would be, snake oil doctor or whatever in agriculture, which, we talk about a lot of interesting things on the show, but I know food, what you put into your body becomes you. And the things that we eat in North America, I mean, you look around, like we were in Paris, we got off the plane in America, like, reminded about how overweight, folks are in North America because of the diet. Walk me through nutrition. Walk me through what it means for you and how you address that.
So just exactly what you said, that what we eat creates every cell in our body, right? And so if we want to feed our brain and have good mental health, we really need to eat really great food. So naturopathic medicine is amazing. So I will not say it's a witch doctor because I love it for the reason that you go back to basics and you go back to nutrition and all of the things that is going in our body. Um, we want to prevent ailments, not treat them with naturopathic medicine. So we're preventing things. So a lot of when I work with my naturopath is looking at going back to basics of what do I need? So am I deficient in a certain mineral or vitamin? How can I supplement that in what I'm eating? Let's see how we can change our diet. Um, there's been so much talk lately about nutrition, and so writing that chapter in my book was really the hardest because there's so many differing opinions. But let's be honest, we know what we need to eat. It is all the things that we have eaten for a long time. Meat is so important. And I'm so tired of hearing people say that you shouldn't eat meat. Okay. It is the most nutrient dense thing we can eat. We need to eat it. We need the protein. Vegetables and fruit, we know we need whole foods. I mean, it's pretty simple. And that's kind of what I wanted to give readers as a message is it's pretty simple stuff. Don't complicate it. It's not complicated. Go back to the basics and eat some whole food. And it's going to help your health and especially your mental health.
Especially mental health. I think it's one of the biggest factors. And the other thing is, I find too, okay, when I'm feeling fat, like when I'm feeling fat, I don't even want to leave the house. Like when I'm bloated, when I'm overeating, when I've put on too much weight, when I haven't brought all this together, I feel super uncomfortable. I feel super uncomfortable in my clothes. I feel super uncomfortable in terms of, flexibility and everything, which has become a lot bigger thing as I've gotten older. And I think part of the challenge too is if you haven't really experienced wellness, if you've never been to that side of the fence, if you will, it's hard to have any perspective beyond your current state. So if you've never done 75 hard, or if you've never done a challenge, or you've never been consistent in your diet and your exercise and maybe your therapy too, I'd challenge you, because the wellness is on the other side is greater than probably anything you've currently experienced by a lot, Lewellyn.
You're absolutely right. And 75 hard, that in itself is hard. So kudos to you for doing that challenge because that one is a hard one. I've looked at that a few times and I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. No, looks good. I could do it, but I'm not there yet. But you're right. You're absolutely right because um, I always say when I'm working out now, I'm working out for my mental health. I'm not working out for my weight. I'm not working out because I ate something that I shouldn't have. I'm working out for my mental health. And what a change in mindset, how valuable that has been for me is incredible. Because you talk about, well, maybe today I feel fat. Those thoughts get less and less when you're doing things for your mental health. If you're doing everything for the sake of your mental health, those things come out of play. They just come out of play eventually. Um, it's funny because I've had that in the past, but my mindset has changed so much that I go for a run in the morning and it's purely to feel good, and that's it. That's what it's for. Nothing else. The physical health, it comes with it. It just is tagged along.
I know what you mean. There was a time in my life, I think, when I had a lot of goals about hitting a certain weight or, feeling a certain way in that regard about self image. But now it's just so much about I know what my day's like without it, and I know what my day is like with it. And I know yesterday I had a very difficult day, and I wanted to get to the gym, but I prioritized a bunch of other work, and it was a downward slope from there. It never got better. But today, I knew that when I got to the gym, and then I got back in time to give Jet a ride to school, and I went to the office, I'm telling you, I felt like the hardest part of the day was showing up at the gym was done, and everything from there was doable. It was workable.
Mhm.
I'm in the state.
Mhm.
I feel great. And the tension that comes in your body from sitting in a tractor all day, from sitting in the office all day, from mulling on how to build your empire every day, we as men just associate our self-worth with what we've built. And if it's not going right, we're going to jump off the parapets of the castle. But if at least if you lifted something heavy, especially as we get older as men, that's 80% of what counts, and the rest is just gravy, man. And if you got nothing else in the day, and that's what I loved about 75 Hard, when you worked out twice a day, first of all, you had a lot of time to process your business. You think it's not productive? Try walking 45 minutes every day outside. Of course, farmers get lots of windshield time, but I don't know if it's the same. That exercise is some of the best time to be processing what's next in your business. And it's probably one of the most profitable things you could do, I think. It's been
I
good for
agree
me.
with you. I completely agree with you. I think some of our best thoughts come when we're working out. It makes your brain work better. It just does. So I completely agree with you on that one. Absolutely.
Hmm. So talk to me, where does therapy, counseling, all this stuff, where does it fit in? And I know for lots of people that's a really tough one to get to, and we should be doing it preventively, but let's face it. We probably only go to therapy when our relationship's about to end, when our business is struggling, when we're so broken down we don't want to. Trouble is, a good therapist, can take a couple of weeks to get into, and by the time you get, if you live through it, it's like, actually, I'm feeling okay now. But how do we
I know.
develop a proactive program around sharing our feelings in a professional circumstance?
So those are all good points. Those are all fantastic points because you're right. It's like, okay, I need to talk to somebody right now in a crisis. Oh, I can't get an appointment. Um, okay. Yeah, we're having trouble in our relationship. We need to get a counselor. Oh, okay. Well, it's going to be 2 weeks. Like, you're right. When you're in the depth of those things in a crisis and you need help, it's sometimes hard to find it. So I will say this. I will say I like to pre-plan and have sessions on my calendar a few times a year. And granted, I will not be in a crisis, maybe when that appointment happens. But in those appointments, it's a good time to practice just talking. And sometimes just working through things, just talking out loud and working through things. And sometimes you'll step away with coping skills, or sometimes you'll take away a strategy that would work the next time that you're in crisis, or there's a lot of things that you can take away. I think that it is a good investment of your time. Having said that, I know it is very hard to find somebody you click with. Sometimes it's hard to get an appointment. It's really great that we have resources like Manitoba Farmer Wellness, where you can pick up the phone and phone at any time. I mean, how great that you could just find a counselor if you need it and for free. That's also helpful because sometimes if we have to go to our doctor and, get referred to a mental health worker, or, you're just not going to do it, right? So those resources are great too. Rely on those. But most importantly, how about our small towns? How about our loved ones? How about our neighbor? How about our friends? I think that those people play such a huge role, and really ultimately leaning on the strength of other people in our small town is what's going to improve mental health collectively. And I write a lot about that. This is a collective movement in our small towns, and we all have a responsibility to improve mental health together. We aren't supposed to do it alone. We shouldn't do it alone. And so while I think that counseling and therapy are really good things to access, we can't always rely on them. We can rely on the people in our lives, and we should. We should have those vulnerable conversations, and when we need help or if we need to just talk to somebody, we need to be doing that.
It's been an amazing culture shift from where, you and I grew up, and the culture and the awareness has come so far that we can have these conversations now. And I think about the stats that come out of some of these places in the world that have the longest living people. And what we learn, a lot of it is about connection. And if you don't have the right connections in your life, you don't have the right purpose that propels you. There was a study that they referred to, the very first strategic coach I ever went to, where they talked about people over the age of 80, statistically, without a partner, you perish shortly, like a year or two. Without a purpose, you perish shortly, within a year or two after the age of 80. What does that tell us about the health of spending quality time? And the cultures around the world that have a 4-day work week and they spend 2 hours in lunches with colleagues and friends and family, and they go home at 7 p.m. and the supper takes all night, and then they go to bed, and it's all fellowship. That will keep
amazing
you alive.
What a blessing, right? But sometimes we can't always do that here, and especially on the farm. And so that's why, if you're going to stop in the field for a meal, put down that tailgate, you put out the food, and y'all talk about how your day's going. And maybe it's not 3 hours, but maybe it's 30 minutes. And maybe that's what we need to fill our cup at that time, right? You're absolutely right. I think that those things are so valuable. How can we look for them, and how can we find them in our schedule? How can we work them in? If we know that those things are important, we will prioritize them. So just knowing that, learning that that is important, connection is important, purpose, all of those things, work it into whatever it is that's on your schedule. You got to get stuff done. I totally get it. I totally know what it's like on farm when you're running. Take 20 minutes, take 30 minutes for the better of everyone.
When I was growing up, I don't even hardly remember a hired man, because my father did it all on the side, while working at the mine, while working in crop insurance, while working at the John Deere store. Now there's a fantastic team of people out at the farm. And I think one of the greatest things that's happened in recent memory out there was they had a NASCAR simulation of a pit stop, and there was different teams, and you had to learn your roles, and every time you went out and did the tire change at the pit stop, there was a little lesson there, and you got better and you learned your role, and it was so incredible. The teamwork was so amazing. And, I had another hired man who was running another farm in another area, who saw that and just said, I think that is so awesome. I would love to be a part of that, and I wish that we had more. And growing up too, it was a lot about the hired man, you're gonna pay him $12 an hour, whatever at the time, right? And they don't know how to run the auger. But now it's bringing people to a way of life in a community that they want to raise their kids and play hockey and attend school there and go to the ski hill and hunt and fish and ride quads. It's a great life. But what's required for keeping people productive on the farm is so much different than our expectation in the fast. Well, I gave this guy $12 for that hour of work. He should know how to, he should have done, it's almost a derogatory term at times, I think, hired man. We've been around that culture a lot. Now it's about teamwork. People demand that. And as well they should, because it's back to purpose.
It is. And each person of the team is a valuable resource. I struggled a lot with not being in the field, when my kids are small, or, making meals, or I'm doing the books and my husband's pulling wrenches and he's working so hard. And yeah, well, I'm working hard too. It's every member of the team. Like, I struggled with what my role is and is it important? Well, yes, heck yes, it's important. And every role on the farm is important. It doesn't matter what your role is. So you're right. If you're a hired man, or if you're making the meals, or if you're doing the books, or whatever your role is, gosh, it's important. I mean, we need all of those people. We need all of those things. And it is a community. It is a team. And we're all on the same team. Like, that's just the way it has to be. That's the way a good work environment is going to be. And I would argue that if you want to be efficient, you need to look after your team first, honestly. Because without it, what do you have? If you're a one-man show, you're going to get burnt out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I understand why your dad was in
families.
Yeah, like the one-man show was out of circumstance because, man, those bills had to get paid and there was not a lot to go around. So it was work as hard as you can, make sure those bills are paid. And sometimes we have to do those things, but when we have a team behind us, all the better, right?
Often for a man, it's easier to go to work, to go to war, to go to battle, to do those activities than to try and address something in your personal relationship or your family, maybe it's your community or whatever, that you don't have the tools for, you don't have the understanding, you're not equipped for. Not like you can go fix that thing in the shop or in the field or just get it done, make it black. I think that's what my father struggled with at times the most, is trying to figure out the family dynamics, especially when his oldest turned out to be a pretty wild rebel. And thank God for Terry to come up behind there and just reassure him that, he did have a farmer and it was all going to be okay. No, not that it was ever really important to Dad in that aspect. And he was always very encouraging about whatever we wanted to do. But how do you work around some of this stuff? I mean, we can talk about whatever we want, but logistically it's pretty tough to just leave the swather and go to a therapy appointment or come to work later because you were working out, or eat right. I mean, I know what it's like to be in a cab and you got X amount of snacks and you're trying to plot the trajectory of that going down your gullet, but it doesn't work out that way. I mean, there's a lot of roadblocks, even beyond the culture. We've talked about that, but physical roadblocks in a small town to doing these things that we in the urban centers enjoy. Can go to the gym before work, can eat healthier, can pick up fresh food on the way from the grocery store when we come home from the office. How do you get around the physical roadblocks to wellness on the farm?
Oh, I talk a lot about that in my book. And honestly, I'm not going to lie. It is harder where I am physically located right now than where you are. Okay? Because if I want to work out, I'm hitting a gravel road.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm going to go run on the gravel. I'm not going to a fancy gym. And if I want to eat healthy, I have grocery stores near me, but you know what's easier? I'm going to plant a garden. Well, a garden's a ton of work. I love my garden, but it's a ton of work. So if I want to eat healthy, I'm going to plant a big garden. I'm going to be sitting in a tractor cab for the next few weeks for seeding. Am I going to be getting all of the things that I need? Well, it'll be less than when I'm not in a tractor cab. I will tell you that. But here's the thing. If we strive for those things 80% of the time, we're going to get them. If we don't strive for them, we're not going to get them. So this is what I talk about prioritizing and boundaries for your mental health. Is I have a boundary that I need to go and work out for 20 minutes before I get in the tractor. Because if I sit in a tractor cab for 400 hours by myself, I'm not going to be in a good mood. Okay. So I need to go run for 20 minutes. I'm going to
You're not
go
going to
do
be
it.
able to
I'm going to
move
go have,
either.
yeah, I'm going to go run and I'm going to put something in the crock pot that's healthy because I know we're going to have to eat later, or I'm going to ask my mother-in-law to help with food so that I know that something is planned for supper later when we need it, because that's going to be a pinch too. And I'm going to get some help because the kids need to go to ball practice or dance or whatever. So I'm going to have to employ some help there. So, yeah, the roadblocks are everywhere. Absolutely. Um, and then throw a wrench in the plans when, you know, somebody gets stuck and you got to go pull them out. And then, you need to be on the phone with CRA, and then, somebody else needs a ride from town and you need parts, and you know what it's like. Like, it's just they're everywhere all the time. So you can't control your environment, and that's not what we're trying to do, because that's not helpful. We can't have control all the time. But we just need to be aware and just look at, okay, what can I do for myself that's gonna make today a little easier.
You know what's as you're talking, I'm thinking, what's great about farming, and what's great about running a business is, I think over time our capacity to deal with bigger and bigger problems grows, and there's so much satisfaction in that, knowing when we're younger. Of course, I'm on the spectrum for being rather excitable. It seems like the world's ending, but you get a little bit older. I guess the parable is, as an old bull, you're kind of walking down the hill, not running down the hill. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much better as you get old and realize, I mean, these things will come and go, but it's not the end of the world.
The wisdom of growing older. I mean, that's valuable, right? Absolutely. The wisdom of growing older. Yeah. If I, could tell my 20-year-old self a lot of things, I'd probably sit her down and buckle up. Here we go. I'm going to tell you some stuff. But no, we can't always have the wisdom of that. And sometimes, sometimes you can tell somebody till you're blue in the face, you should do this, you should do this, but you only learn by doing. So that is what the way of the world, right? So yeah.
Well, it's so fascinating too, because whether it's employees or kids, you really you want to get in there and tell them how it is, and you want to set up consequences and stuff like that. But the reality is, if we can just love and accept people where they're at and have some understanding and think about ourselves at that age. I mean, I look at the kids, the teenagers now in our lives, and I look at, some of my younger employees, and I think about where I was at those ages. They're doing they're doing just fine, thank you. They're doing very well. Yes, they're making some of the mistakes that I made, which really frustrates me to see someone else do, and maybe that's why it bugs me so much, because I know better now, and they should be more like I am now when it comes to cleanliness and godliness and whatever else things we think is behooves us. But really, I mean, how did that go over when people tried to tell us anything, Llewellyn?
Yeah, probably not very good. Yeah, I can admit to that. Stubborn is a word I know very well. I'm sure you do too.
I'm sure it serves you well, given all the things that you've done. We're getting close to wrapping this up, but I wanted to ask you about gratitude. One of the greatest blessings from Andy Frisell is his equation for happiness, that when you practice, works very well, especially doing 75 hard. That happiness equals discipline plus gratitude. You apply discipline to your life, and you're grateful for your life, and that's kind of it. That's kind of it. Where does gratitude come into the context of your book and your journey with mental health?
Gratitude is something that I've had to learn, um, really, honestly, because it's a skill. I feel like it's a skill. Um, I have a practice that I do every night. And so I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for from that day. And I do it every night before I go to bed. I have a notebook beside my bed, and it has become a really important ritual for me, because I, throughout the day, will look for those things. And so, for an example, today I went outside to drive my kids to the bus. We have a little bit of a drive. We have to take them a few miles to catch the bus here. So we walked outside, and the first thing I heard this morning were the loons calling. So I love loons, first of all, like love them. Think they're the greatest thing ever. And when I hear them calling, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just like so special on my heart. And I was so grateful that I heard that this morning. It's so simple, but it's something that, if you're looking for something, you'll find it. And so that's a practice that's been really important. Another thing that I do with my kids is before bed, when I tuck them in, I say, what was the best thing about your day? And so it's really great because it's them kind of telling me what they're grateful for. And we do that every night with them too. So I'm trying to teach them at a younger age how it's important, how to look for things, what you're grateful for, where's the gratitude. I think it's a good skill to learn.
Yes, I love that. I love that, Llewellyn. One of the greatest things in our lives is sitting around the kitchen table with loved ones, and it can be corny, it can be uncomfortable, and Uncle Terry always makes us do it. But man, when you go around that table, and when you hear what everybody's grateful for, and you have some laughs, and some people are long and some people are short. As you can imagine, me and my brother are some of the longer speakers. But it's just incredible, and it's incredible how like the juices flow, the chemistry flows from somewhere. Who knows where that comes from? But it's a feel good chemistry. It's a drug. You feel great, and there's nothing better than being around loved ones that are happy and healthy. And we're all so blessed. It's incredible. I wanted to ask
I
you in
love that you
closing,
do that.
Llewellyn. Yeah, yeah, we really love that, and it's funny too because it was new to my girlfriend's kids, and I mean, this is kind of when it's new, it's really uncomfortable. But man, did they glow? Did they ever glow? And they're so
And
glad to do
everybody
that.
gets,
And they kind of
and
rib me
everybody
now. Oh, we're
gets,
gonna do the
yeah,
gratitude thing.
yeah, yeah. I love that because everybody gets a voice, right? Everybody gets a chance. Everybody gets to be heard too. And how important is that, right? For kids? That's awesome.
It's a 180. It's a 180 from however you felt before. You can't almost help but, it's hard to pout through it. Put it that way.
Yeah,
I've tried.
yeah.
We're Volga Germans. Like our brow is always furrowed,
You're
and our
right.
lives are
You're right.
hard.
I know it. Yeah,
Um,
I know it. I'm relating to this.
we're not
Totally.
even really
I just,
supposed to be happy. Like it probably takes away from our productivity if we're fooling around.
honestly. Oh, this is so funny. So true. So funny.
What was the biggest? I mean, this is a huge thing that you've done with writing a book. I admire it so much. I mean, I'm looking at the cover of your book and your website, and I'm just so proud of you and for you. Like,
Oh,
what's
thanks.
the biggest thing you learned writing this book, and like the self reflection, and then the sharing, and you're on TV, and people are reading your book, and what's the biggest? Sum it all, wrap it all up for us here.
Okay, what's the biggest thing I've learned? Oh, there's so much. I don't even know where to start. I've learned that um, I found my voice. There's a big aspect of music in this book. I rely on music kind of as a tool um, for my mental health, and so I kind of have like song cues throughout the book. But when I say I've found my voice, it's like there's so much, um, I guess, healing in telling my story is what I've found. And with as much fear that there maybe was in sharing my story, there's um, so much healing that's come with it. So um, it was a huge undertaking. I'm not gonna lie. Will I ever write another one? Maybe not. I'm not really sure. Um, when I get like we were talking about being stubborn, when I kind of pick a project, I kind of see it through, which sometimes is to a fault. I will admit that. Um, but I'm at no regrets at all. Super glad I did it. Um, it's helping other people, and I love to hear the feedback from readers now, people reading it. And all of the intentions that I had with putting it out, it's kind of coming full circle now. So um, yeah, I learned a ton, but in the end, really, it was a lot of healing on my end.
Reading through your book, skimming through it, one thing that caught my eye was there was a moment where you declared, "I will write a best-selling book."
Yeah, talk about writing down your goals. I wrote that down for a lot of days. Um, I wrote that down, put it put it on paper, and I had that goal. I wanted to do it. It was a calling. I had to do it, so I was all in.
Proud of you. Hell of a job. Unbelievable. And doing a lot of good in the world. Really doing a lot of good in the world. How would people find you, find this book, read this book, be better, live with wellness?
Well, you can find my book at lewellynmelnyk.com, which is my website. You can also find it on Amazon, and you may be able to find it in your small town library if you're from Manitoba or Saskatchewan. You can request it if you can't find it. I've hit a lot of small towns, so it's in a lot of small town stores around here as well. Um, but yeah, I urge people just to keep talking, and if you need help, make sure you ask for help. There's no shame in it. Um, Everybody deserves to get help if they need it, and it may be, as easy as talking to somebody, just having a conversation that you haven't had that you need to have. So don't think it's complicated. Go back to the basics.
It's simple but not easy, is it?
That is true. It can be a difficult thing,
Thank
but
you,
worthwhile.
Lewellyn, for what you've done here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
I'm really glad that we got to do this.
Me
And
too.
I always know, because people tell me when I do these kinds of episodes, people reach out, people say, hey, that had an impact. And this is such a big thing in people's lives. We lose people to this all the time, people that we love.
Um, so my step auntie, Sherry Hollier, I don't know if you know her. She's from Neepawa.
No.
Was married to Royce Hollier. They're both teachers in Neepawa, and we lost him to suicide in November. Um, and he was a prominent member of that community. He was a teacher, he was a coach, he was a father. He struggled for many, many years. And when he committed suicide in November, many, many people said they had no idea he was struggling. Not a clue. So I was writing this book, and then in November, when we lost Royce, I was like kind of putting off finishing it. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, um, if that's not a kick in the ass to get this book written, like it was just one of those things where you're like, get at her, get it out into the world and stop being a shithead and stop putting it off. And who cares the fear? Who cares what people are going to say? Get the book out. So it was like, yeah, like just do it. You're right. Like there's so many people that we've lost, and it's just for what?
Well, and there's something there too, and we don't know what it is, and I can't speak to this particular circumstance, obviously. But men who are driven to succeed and to provide and keep our chin up and be strong and be the leaders. Like yesterday, I had a day. I couldn't really hide it from the team, and a few people reached out and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I realized, well, I'm not actually like pulling this off that well, and it
But
was
why do you
seriously
have to though?
incapacitating. And I, well, because I'm the leader, and everybody looks to me for strength, and they all come to me for solutions, and they want me. I feel like I need to have the answers, and I feel like there's a baseline of sort of courtesy and interest level I need to show because it's my company and all that, and I'm older and everything. And it's
but
not
wouldn't it
just my
be,
employees.
if
It's
you're a leader though, is it
so
not,
many people in my
wouldn't
life.
it be good for you to say I struggle and it's okay to struggle, guys? Like as a leader, you don't have to hide that stuff. That's what I mean.
I did.
Like you saying I need a day is
Yeah.
teaching them to say I need a day. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Nothing
I
wrong at all.
did. I did. I made it. I should have canceled more of my appointments. I did a radio spot that I, obviously could have done. I thought like a lot better at. And in the middle of the night, I wake up and I'm like, I wonder if I could like redo that because I could do a lot better if I could actually think clearly beyond my situation yesterday. But I did. I said to my team, and I think that is a coachable moment too, to be able to say like, look, I'm having a day, but the important thing is that you understand it has nothing to do with you. I love you and I'm proud of you. It has nothing to do with you. I've had to say that to my family. I've had to say that to my coworkers, and that's tough. But and there's apparently statistics that men typically will commit suicide more often than women. And I think, we try to bear that cross alone because we have so much pressure, like, for the responsibility that we put on ourselves. And we don't want to fail. We don't want to let anybody down. We always want to be strong. But sometimes we need to bend, and bending can mean like getting down on our knees and just being still and just, being in the moment. And, I couldn't push any further. It was a day where I could not keep doing anything.
Yeah, I totally get
But
it.
it
Totally get it.
is interesting too. I think things are changing. The last guy that I had on the podcast was talking about how they had a chaplain in their company. It was one of the best things they did, and this person was available day or night to any of their staff. And when a young man in the company punched his dad in the face in a drunken fit, and when somebody's loved one passed away, they had faith, they had understanding, they had a place to go. That's where we're getting to. Now we have chaplains in our companies, and I think we're getting there. I'm really proud of where we're getting to, and you're a big part of that. But I encourage the men out there too. Like, and we just, the culture. And who knows what, people like my dad suffered through silently that they never shared with anybody, or your father, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing.
I
It's
don't
the
know.
thing.
When you get to chapter 11, you'll enjoy that one. It's called Alcoholics and Assholes. And it talks about
I was like,
all of the people
this is
in
my
the
chapter.
community. Well, I mean, feel like you'll relate to that chapter. I'm not saying that's you, but I'm saying you'll relate because, yeah, people don't deal with that shit and they just drink and they use sarcasm. And it's like, you guys suck. You guys suck. And that's a lot of the hard crap that we have to deal
It's
with when we
way
live in a small
tougher to
town.
deal with everything without all that.
Mm-hmm.
Without all that stuff. That's a
Mm-hmm.
crutch, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
actually so bad because it puts you in a worse place after. It just doesn't help at all. Being clean, living a clean life, eating clean, being grateful, doing the exercise, doing the work, becoming self-aware, considering that, not everybody can be as wonderful as you are. And having a
Oh
little
God,
bit of grace.
I'm
But the
far from
pastor was talking
perfect.
about wiggle tolerance. I think it was wiggle tolerance was the technical term. The pastor was talking about how much wiggle tolerance do we have for people, in our community and in our church. Like for teachers, some teachers have a lot of wiggle room for kids. Some have none. But guaranteed, the ones who have more wiggle room for others are way kinder to themselves, and that's always been a huge issue for me. I have been so horrible to myself. I'm
I
so
know
hard on
yourself.
myself. It's easy to be hard on others when you're just ruthless with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things we learn as we grow and grow old, getting old.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
love it.
in my journey, I've also learned that like you're not gonna convert or convince some people. And that's kind of been hard because I'm like always like self-growth and what can I learn and how can I do things better, and some people don't have any interest in doing that. And it's hard for me to have conversations with those people because I'm like, wow, see, you're need a lot of help. You're not getting it. And I'm just gonna watch from afar. Don't get in my space. you know? Um, like I am like a control freak, so it's like, oh, I can help everyone. No, I can't help everyone.
Right.
I want to, but I can't. So you do you. And I'll just stay over here and I'll live my best life. Because I just find like it wears on me. And especially when those people are in your circle too, right? Like when people are in your circle and they're just like shitting on everything, you're like, this is not helpful. Like, right? Don't you just feel like you absorb that energy? I hate that.
I totally am with you. And the hard part is too, like, you want everybody to have what you have because of the joy it brings. And I think, for people that have faith and stuff, they feel that too. It's not just that it's written, you should go out and share it. It's that you want people to be with you. And conversely, if you have a bad habit like drinking, people want you to drink with them because, well, let's be fair, I love alcohol, but people want you to drink with them so that they're not alone in that. And we want people to experience what we're experiencing. But the trouble is, they're on their own journey. They're getting better in their own way. They might never, go where you've gone, but they might have their own things. And it's just, man, letting other people be and staying out of other people's business, that's some of the toughest exercise. Like lifting is easy now. I mean, I went to the gym this morning. It's pretty enjoyable. You know what the heavy lifting is? Letting people figure out their own shit. It's none of my fucking business. I'm not there to, like, I'm not the traffic.
Oh God, that's good
advice.
I'm not
the director of
Write
traffic.
That shit down.
Yeah. Well,
write that in a book.
I don't know if I could ever write a book as long as you did, but I could probably write like a 24-pager or something. PDF, a big PDF.
Wait, like
not a novel.
You do podcasts. Like, how do you do podcasts? Like, I could do this. This is amazing what you do. I find writing way easier. Like talking to somebody than doing podcasts. God, I feel like that's 10 times as hard. Honestly, it's amazing. You do a good job.
I'm really lucky. I was talking to Sean Haney yesterday. 5 seasons later, like we're still going. But I mean, I wouldn't be having these kinds of conversations if I didn't have, this gift and this opportunity. And I think part of mental health is living your unique ability and your God-given talents to its fullest. Because even if it's hard, and even if you're afraid, and even if you doubt yourself, and you talked about self-confidence, and I'm always so hard on myself. Like yesterday, I could have done better in that radio interview. I could have had my points clear. I could have. And I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. I'm pissed off and I want to take it back and I'm kind of horrified. But, the reality is we all need to forgive ourselves before we can start on anybody else. That's the most important part. And there's a huge gap you're going to feel and you're going to know if you had this book in you and you didn't write it, you're gonna, that space shows up somewhere. It's a gap between where you are and where you want to be, and sometimes you have to close that gap and you have to count that win and done, check mark. Now what's next? So what's the next big thing for Lewellyn?
Well, I'm supposed to speak at the Manitoba Farm Women's Conference, and also got asked to speak at
that's cool.
I don't know what they call it, like grazing school, whatever it's called now. I don't know. Manitoba Agriculture is having their thing in December. So I have 2 things booked, and public speaking is not my strong point. So maybe you can give me some tips. I don't know.
Oh, come on. You're a journalist. You're on TV. That's shit's easy.
Yeah, it's different when it's just a live audience. I don't know. It's crazy. So yeah, I'm a little bit preparing for that, but I have a lot of time to prepare before that happens. So it's a fall time. I haven't really booked too much in the summer because I'm like, I just need to farm and everybody just needs to leave me alone. I've seen a lot of people lately, like it's just too people-y right now. So yeah, I'm going to take some time, put the crop in and chill. And then next winter, get at her, do some speaking and stuff. So we'll see how things go.
I think that's a good lesson too. You don't always have to be taking over the world. You don't always have to be moving forward. Sometimes you need to rest. Sometimes you need to pause. You did a big thing here. Count your wins. And if you want to get through public speaking, I highly recommend Toastmasters. And maybe that's another barrier in a small town community, but if you can, do Toastmasters. It's wonderful.
Okay. I'll look it up for sure. Got to do something here.
I think since
Gotta get
COVID, they've
something
been
going.
online, but
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me.
no, it's been awesome. I really appreciate it. Say hi to James for me and the family. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
just been really cool. It's
That's great.
crazy to see that you wrote a book and did all that. So good for you.